Alright, how's it going guys? Welcome back to another collection video. This is my third week in quarantine. All of us are going through this coronavirus pandemic, so business as usual. Hope you're not too bored, hope you're staying safe. And yeah, so we're going to continue business as usual. You'll notice that with the previous videos I've only shown CDs apart from the haul I did from Athens. So what I'm going to do today is something different and start showing my vinyl. Now, I'm going to show my vinyl in three broad categories. So, heavy metal, which may include thrash metal, speed metal, hard rock, glam metal, for all intents and purposes, death metal, and black metal. So, three broad categories. If my classifications don't agree with yours, that's fine. Let me know why. But I'm just trying to keep it open to three broad categories. There's a friend of mine, Lloyd, very good friend. He's given me a lot of advice about this channel and answered a lot of my questions about, you know, certain things. I asked him what would he like to see. He actually requested death metal to start the vinyl. So with the vinyl, I'm going to show 5 records at a time, just so these videos don't get too long, per genre, just going through alphabetically. So that's what I'm going to start with today. Without further ado, we'll just get straight into it. Okay, by the way, what we're listening to in the background, you may have heard, this is Deicide with their self-titled debut. So once again, as I've mentioned in previous videos, disputed pronunciation about this band. Deicide, depends on how you say it. As I said, I grew up in Australia, so I say Deicide, but it depends on how you say deity, whatever. But anyway, this is their classic debut album. Possibly my favorite by them. It's just brilliant. There's a special reason why I'm showing this and why I put it on for this video, which you'll no doubt find out in a moment. So let's get into it. Alright, so hint there from the CD that I'm playing. The first record I'm going to show today is by Amon. Amon, depends on how you say it. Again, interesting because this was the pre-Deicide or Deicide band. So basically the same lineup, Glenn Benton, Steve Ashheim, and the Hoffman brothers, Eric and Brian. So this was the band that eventually went on to become Deicide. This is a compilation. This one's called Sacrificial. It's got 2 demos, so I'll just show you the back here. There's that famous picture which was featured on the Deicide debut album. And you can probably see here, it consists of 2 demos, the 1989 demo called Sacrificial, and the 1987 demo entitled Feasting the Beast. So, as I mentioned, this band, they initially used the name Amon or Amon, but then they became Deicide later on. So, for all intents and purposes, it's the same band. So, talking about this band, you all know Deicide, so I don't need to go into that. Essentially, this record that I'm holding, it contains a lot of songs from this album. These were the demos which came on, eventually went on to form this album, Deicide. Just read the song titles. From Sacrificial, you've got Lunatic of God's Creation, Sacrificial Suicide, Crucifixation, Carnage of the Temple of the Damned, Dead by Dawn, and Blaspherion. So all of those from the first album, of course, first Deicide album. And then the Feasting the Beast demo, 1987. That's the intro is called Feasting the Beast, and then that features Sacrificial Suicide, Day of Darkness, and Oblivious to Nothing. So you'll remember that it went on to be called Oblivious to Evil, but the demo version, Oblivious to Nothing. If, for whatever reason, you're not familiar with Deicide, it's just, in my opinion, unique death metal. Like the first 2 albums in particular by Deicide, the self-titled one and Legion, are just legendary. There's nothing like them. I love those albums. This was Deicide was the second death metal band I got into back in the day. So they always have some significant meaning to me, and like I've still been a fan all over the years, but those first 2 albums in particular, especially the first one, like just great. And Legion is also fantastic. So no surprise that I'm a fan of this one. Basically, it's, if you've heard the Deicide self-titled debut, these songs are almost identical. It's just the demo versions. With Sacrificial, that's basically the same, just the production's maybe a bit rawer and the vocals are more in your face, but I don't need to go into those songs because you've all heard them before. And then the Feasting the Beast demo, that one is a lot rawer. Like the production's a bit worse. It's kind of muffled, and the vocals are kind of more blackened, like sort of raspier and snarled. Whereas with Sacrificial, it's more that conventional Glenn Benton voice. But both phenomenal. I actually really like both demos. The first one, Sacrificial, 1989, that one, the sound quality is great, so I can't get past that. The second one though, it's raw, it's aggressive, so I like them both. Just like if you're a fan of this band, Deicide, then you'll definitely like this album just as a collector's item. And actually it's the Hoffman brothers who left Deicide. They continued, well, they resurrected Amon after this, and they've released one album. I haven't heard it, but I think from what I understand it's in the same style as Deicide, so interested to check that out. Let me know. This one, it just comes on a picture disc, which is quite nice. Plays pretty well for a picture disc. God damn it. Oh, that's just typical, isn't it? Okay, so you have side A. So this is the Sacrificial side. Well, I'm not the hugest fan of this artwork, but it's kind of cool on the picture disc. And then I quite like this one. This is that iconic photo of the band from the self-titled album. Yeah, really cool. So nice collector's item. And it comes in a gatefold, which I'll show you in just a minute. Got to get this shit back together. Yeah, so just opens up as a gatefold. There's the picture of the band, which people know from the Deicide years, of course. And it does actually come with an insert. So what you've got here, just old pictures of the band and lyrics there, for those who don't know. Okay, so yeah, as I said, if you're a Deicide fan, you'll love this as well. Just a rawer version. For me, I'm a big fan of the band, so it's just a collector's item. And as I said, I'm an especially big fan of the first two albums, so it was a no-brainer to get this one when my friend Preacher said he was selling them, so that's pretty cool. Check it out. Amon Sacrificial, the demo days from Deicide. Coming up next, this album is one which needs no introduction. As I said, some people may disagree with my classification, so let me just tread cautiously as I say this. Some people will probably say, what? This is Amorphis with Elegy. Okay, I know what you're gonna say. Amorphis is not a death metal band. Maybe not these days, but you can't deny that when they first started out, they were a death metal band with Privilege of Evil and the Karelian Isthmus and what's the other one? Like even Tales from a Thousand Lakes had elements of death metal, as did this one. So like this album has some sort of growled, low-pitched death metal vocals, but at the same time it was the album where they started to become progressive. But for my purposes of classification, I don't want to lump this in with traditional heavy metal, because obviously it's not like Iron Maiden or Judas Priest. It's a bit different. So it's sort of like, think of this as a progressive death metal album. Like it's got elements of death metal, but it's when the band started moving on. I got this gatefold actually in Amsterdam. Just got the titles on the back and it explains the significance of the album. If you've never heard Amorphis, you should rectify that because they're a great band. A lot of people say that Tales from a Thousand Lakes is their best album, and I have to admit that's a great album. For me, this is my favorite though, because it's the first one I heard. Back in the day when I got a lot of Relapse compilations, I heard the songs from this Better Unborn and My Cantil, or Cantala, I'm not sure how you say it. But yeah, the acoustic version, and I just fell in love with this band, thought they were amazing. And it was at that time, like I was in my late teens, I listened to death metal, and it's like, it sort of blew my mind at that time, like, oh, there's a death metal band that's singing clean vocals as well, and they sort of incorporate elements of other music, like aspects of Metallica or maybe the Tea Party, but it was just interesting, you know, like Middle Eastern music, psychedelic. If you've never heard Amorphis, I would say this is the essential album to start with. Not just because I did, but it's like the perfect blend of the old and the new. It's a mixed bag and you hear everything, so great album. This one comes on a double vinyl, so there's two plain black vinyls just like this. Not sure if you can see that well. Just the labels, they look kind of similar. Yeah. And it's got the full album and a couple of live tracks. So side D features some live versions of Better Unborn, Against Widows, The Castaway, and Black Winter Day. So those last two songs, of course, were from the previous album, Tales from a Thousand Lakes, but obviously if you're a fan of this band, it's going to be awesome. So yeah, really happy to get this. When I saw it on vinyl, I just had to grab it. I've been a fan of this album since 98, something like that. How to describe it if you've never heard it? Aspects of death metal blended with traditional heavy metal and psychedelic influences and Middle Eastern influences. Just really, really interesting, but the songs are just immortally memorable, and like this album's just held a close place in my heart over the years, and it will continue to do so, I'm sure. No insert with the version I got, it's just in this gatefold, so you've got the lyrics here, and that's about it. I don't need to go into too much more detail about it. What are my favorite songs? Like, I think the first 4 songs, you can't really beat them, like Better Unborn, Against Widows would be one of my favorite Amorphis tracks of all time, it's just fantastic. I also like The Orphan, track 4 on Rich and Poor, just amazing. So much emotion in that song, you can't help singing along, so love it. Like all of the other songs I mentioned, apart from those songs I mentioned, they're all great. My Cantil, My Cantilar, there's 2 versions. This one, the one on this album, it's the version, the electric version, where they feature, you know, heavy guitars and keyboards and everything. Actually, my preferred version is the acoustic version, because that's the one I heard on the Relapse compilation, and that's also featured on this, which is great. Also, the title track, Elegy, it's depressing and melancholic, but a great song. But again, just, yeah, no bad songs on this album. Absolutely perfect. If you want to hear death metal with a sort of twisted, psychedelic, progressive edge, definitely check this band out. And this is the album to start with, in my opinion. So that's Amorphis with Elegy. There you go. Coming up next then, shifting gears a bit, this is going back to sort of purist death metal. We have Autopsy with the Headless Ritual. So for those who haven't seen my previous videos, I did mention that Autopsy is my favorite death metal band. Just classic, legendary, old school band formed in the late 80s and most famous for their early work in the 90s. When the band reformed a few years ago, actually it was about 10 years ago now, it was 2011, I already had their early albums on CD and I decided to get the newer ones on vinyl, so I still don't have them all, there's a few gaps, but this was the first one I got when it was released by Peaceville. And postage cost a fuckload, but that's another story. As I mentioned, they're famous for their early albums. I would agree with most people that the first 3 or 4 albums are their best. Acts of the Unspeakable is my favorite album. That was the first one I heard back in the day. Of course, the other ones, those 4 are legendary. A lot of people didn't like Shit Fun, but I do, so there you go. Anyway, then the band broke up after Shit Fun, and then they resurrected in 2010 or 11 and have released quite a few albums since. So this was the first one I bought on vinyl anyway. Comes in a nice gatefold, so with the lyrics and sort of cartoon pictures of the band there, cool. And also just a photo of the band and some credits there. Plain black vinyl, just logo labels, so there you go. I've heard a lot of people review this online and they said they didn't like it. I actually like this album, but I will say that in comparison to their earlier ones, I don't like it as much. Still, there's some great songs, just not a lot of standout tracks on this album, for me. When they get to their best, it's very good, but there's all those classic Autopsy elements there, like it's doom-laden, atmospheric death metal and disturbing and heavy and everything. Some quirky riffs and stuff, but just, for me, a lot of these songs are sort of background songs. Like, I can put the album on and listen to the whole thing, but there's just not a lot of songs which really grab me as much. But still a good album nevertheless. Side A, She Is a Funeral, that's a good doomy kind of song. Coffin Crawlers, what I like about that song is the riff and the lick in it, like, it makes you imagine creatures crawling in a coffin, so it sort of transposes a concept to music, which I think is pretty cool. Talking about my favorite songs, Running from the Goat Head, that's a song towards the end, sung by Eric Cutler, and the lead guitarist. He's got a sort of raspier voice, but I really like the sound of his voice in that song. That's got a kind of punky edge, so a standout track for me. Also, the ending track, actually, the Headless Ritual, the title track, that's an instrumental. It's very rare for an instrumental to be my favorite song, but, oh, well, I wouldn't say it's my favorite, but it's a damn good song. Like, when I first listened to this, it just stood out to me because it's such a hypnotic, haunting riff, like, brilliant. It grabs your attention. So it's quite funny that it's almost, in a way, they saved the best song for last on this album, but the Headless Ritual, or one of the best, the Headless Ritual, the title track, has just got this great hypnotic chorus. Like, you've got to hear that riff, it's amazing. In terms of my other favorite song, absolute number one on this album, Flesh Turns to Dust. Like, that song is just so doomy. It's got this haunting melody to it, like this riff that just sticks in your head, and then the chorus has got this doomy breakdown. Flesh Turns to Dust, to me, is sort of like, it captures the essence of what this band is about, so really like that. So, as I said, not one of my favorite Autopsy albums, but good nevertheless. And for the three tracks which stand out to me the most, namely Running from the Goat Head, the Headless Ritual, and Flesh Turns to Dust, the last three tracks, it's worth it alone. Autopsy with the Headless Ritual. So coming up next, I have another Autopsy album. This is Torniquets, Hacksaws, and Graves. Not sure if you can see the artwork there. This is one of my favorite Autopsy artworks, just iconic, with the zombie ripping up the vein and sawing his arm off. Pretty cool. Yeah. So this one was the one that came out after the Headless Ritual, and continues in the same vein. Like, Autopsy have sort of stuck to a reliable formula over the years, so if you like their music, you're not going to be disappointed. It's a bit like AC/DC or something like that, in terms of the concept of following their formula. It's like that. So this one, first of all, I'll just start by saying that I like it more than the Headless Ritual. To me, there's just more standout tracks. I'm not sure how other people feel about it, but yeah, it just sort of, it captures that old death metal essence, like the old school 90s one that I miss, so even more so than the Headless Ritual. So again, not really any bad songs. Not as, like, a lot of songs don't stand out to me that much in comparison to the early albums, but there are some great songs on this, and I like the lyrics too. My favorites, it's interesting. Like I said, with the Headless Ritual, the last three songs were my favorite. On this one, the last four songs on the album. So essentially, Deep Crimson Dreaming, Parasitic Eye, Burial, and Autopsy. So Deep Crimson Dreaming has sort of got a mental funeral-esque haunting melody to it, you know, like with the acoustic guitars and stuff. Parasitic Eye, great song, shredding guitar solo, and that Burial is just so doomy and heavy and grim sounding. It's brilliant. And Autopsy, the last track, just heavy, obnoxious. It's got reference to a lot of their older song titles from the earlier albums, and yeah, just brilliant. So again, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just for me, but I feel that they saved the best songs for last on this album. Again, for those four tracks alone, worth it. So definitely check this out. Like, it's got that old school death metal vibe, which I love. If you like 90s death metal, don't pass this by. It's great. It comes with this nice jacket, so band photo with the old school logo, portrait of the band, plain black vinyl with the Autopsy logo. Yep, so same kind of thing. And also, once again, they don't shy on the packaging with this, which is good. It comes in another gatefold, so nice layout here. Band and the picture and lyrics. And this one comes with this really cool poster. So a massive artwork of the cover. I'd like to frame this one day, but from what I've heard, it's hard to frame these square ones. Interestingly, I also had one for the Headless Ritual, but I moved house a few years ago and mysteriously that disappeared, so I don't know what the hell happened to that, but moral of the story is, when you move house or move somewhere, put your poster back in the record jacket, otherwise it's going to go missing. Alright. And we're almost done. Just got one more record for today. This one I talked about just recently, so I don't need to say too much about it, so I can spare you of that. This is Broken Hope with Swamped in Gore. So you'll see that this is the alternative artwork. Like, this one I don't like as much, but it's got that kind of old school feel to it. For those who didn't see my previous video, there's the artwork, the other CD version. So that's the one with the bloody zombie. I actually like this one a bit more, but then again, this one's quite cool and iconic for the vinyl version. So on the back you just got band logo, song titles, band photo. If you haven't seen my previous video, it was the very one before this actually, I mentioned that Broken Hope is just one of those death metal bands. They've been a staple band in the scene since the early 90s, American death metal band. And even though I've liked this music since the 90s, this was a band that just passed me by until recently. So shame on me because they're great. I don't want to repeat myself too much, but essentially it's just very old school, traditional 90s death metal, haunting, disturbing, just fantastic. All those elements of traditional death metal there. My favorite songs on this, as I mentioned in the previous video, would be Devourer of Souls, Awakened by Stench, Swamped in Gore, and Gobbling the Guts. But again, no bad songs on this album. Just this album is mostly mid-paced, it's very catchy, and just got a very old school vibe. Brutal, the vocals are fantastic, production is raw. Perfect, yeah. So, if you want to see more detail or hear more detail about this album, by any chance, just watch my previous video and you'll hear about it there. This one is just a basic one, it's not a gatefold or anything, but what I really like is that it comes on this translucent dark green vinyl. Very cool. Nice labels too with a logo. So this is great in the sense that it's matching the cover artwork, which I really like. And also comes with this nice insert, so you've got the band logo there, liner notes and credits, and also lyrics. So yeah, if you like brutal old school 90s death metal, and let's face it, for a lot of people who watch these kind of channels, who doesn't, yeah, definitely check this band out if you haven't. Nice collector's edition. This is Broken Hope with Swamped in Gore. Alright guys, so I'm going to stop there for today. That's 5 records. With some of these bands, as I mentioned, I have the other albums on CD. If there are any albums by these bands you think I'm missing or something like that, let me know. That's about it. So depending on how this goes, I'm not sure what I'm going to do next with the vinyls. I might go back to CDs for a bit because I have a shit ton of those. But I hope you enjoyed this video. Any suggestions you have or any recommendations you have for the next video about a certain style or genre you want to see, just let me know in the comments. That would be great. Alright, so take care. Have a good weekend. Stay safe amidst this pandemic. In the meantime, stay metal, keep listening to good music, and I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.